In the quiet moments before the world wakes up, there's a place where pain meets peace, where every breath feels like a prayer and grief stands still. We carry the weight of what was and search for meaning in the smallest things. And sometimes all it takes is one moment to remind us we're still here, still healing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I'm the host of this podcast. And yes, we are your number one podcast for bringing you stories around death, doubt, and grief, all the messiness that comes in between with some amazing people out here doing some amazing things, changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say, if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And most importantly, if you know anyone who could benefit from the conversations that we have, please share this along with them. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. And yes, this is a live stream. So if you have any questions or comments for either myself or my guest, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my next guest, Miss Gina, to the show. Gina, how you doing?
I'm good, Tony. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm really, really good. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to having this conversation. We got the chance to talk for a good little while yesterday, and so I can only imagine how today's conversation is going to go. Now, before we get started, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey, everyone. I'm Gina Fox. I am a certified NeuroSomatic Art practitioner and a certified Transformative practitioner. I live in the state of Ohio. I am a trauma survivor, and I am just so excited to be here to kind of dive deep into trauma and wherever the conversation goes, to hopefully bring some hope and inspiration and empowerment to whoever's listening today.
I love that. And thank you for the work that you do. Very, very important, because when we talk about trauma, there's people, and I could be wrong about this, so just let me know what you think. There's people walking around dealing with unresolved trauma and not even knowing, right? You know what I'm saying? Because
Absolutely.
it's become embedded into their psyche that it becomes dealing with these things become like a normality, right?
Absolutely.
And so what are your thoughts on that?
So what ends up happening is you are absolutely correct. A lot of people walk around not understanding that they've had trauma because they're so accustomed to what has happened. They don't understand the after effects of what happened to them or their environment. So what is happening to them, they think is normal, when in fact it's really not normal. It's having an abnormal, I believe it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation is kind of the saying along with that.
I love that. Now, what is your approach when these individuals come across your doorstep? How do you get them to start recognizing the things that they've gone through?
Sure.
Right, that have had a significant impact on them, especially throughout their nervous system or their mental health.
Yes. So one of the things that I like to work with them on is as a certified trauma coach. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a licensed practitioner. So obviously I can't, diagnose or anything like that. So as Tony said, this is all education, things going from things that I have gone through in my life and in my practice. So what I do is I help them understand the root cause of everything, because there's always a root cause of everything, the after effects of trauma. So what we do is we kind of obviously have our initial consultation. We go on to asking, different things and diving a little bit deeper. There's other things we can do, like a geniogram, which actually kind of shows what their trauma is. But a lot of people come and they have no idea. So what I like to do is, again, dive deeper into it and say, okay, here's the correlation. These are the things that you've gone through. These are the after effects of the things that you've gone, these are the after effects of the things that you've gone through. You become a product of your environment. Most people grow up in maybe a negative environment, so they end up being a negative person. So we look at all of that collectively, and then I just kind of put it on the table and tell them, these are the things that you have gone through. These are the after effects. And then kind of the light bulb will go off and they'll say, wow, I never knew that. Most people don't know that unless it's brought to light, unfortunately.
Now, I love the way that you said that, because you have your own experience dealing with trauma, getting to where you are today. You mind sharing your story with the audience with us?
Absolutely not. That's one of the things that brings the hope and the inspiration and the empowerment. My story is very deep. I will not share a lot of the details, but I will tell you this, because I will share a lot so you get an understanding of the things that I've gone through. Because here I sit today, and I like to tell people before I share it, our scars are not on the outside, they're on the inside. And if you could literally cut somebody down the center and just peel back all of their skin and all their layers, you would see all of that trauma, in the brain and in their body. You would actually be able to see the after effects and the trauma. But unfortunately, we can't see it on the outside. So from the age of 5 to the age of 16, I was sexually abused by a family member. During that time, I was sexually assaulted. I ended up marrying somebody that mimicked my abusers. And so myself, as I got into my teen years, into my adult years, I ended up marrying a narcissist that was very abusive. During the times of probably 16 to 21-ish, I developed, I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic, but I would drink excessively, not realizing that I was dealing with a lot of pain, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. Ended up going through a horrific divorce, married a wonderful man. He was an angel send, hit the age of 37, and complex trauma took over. It started roaring its ugly head. And it was just one of those things that consumed me. I wanted to run away. I didn't know who I was anymore. And it was one of those things that I told my husband, I want to divorce you. And, we had 5 kids. I had, just my youngest son was probably 2 or 3 years old. And I just thought, what is wrong with me? Why am I feeling this way? I literally thought I was losing my mind. And I was just like, something has got to give. And my husband said to me, I was going to leave Ohio and move back to Massachusetts, where I'm from. And my husband said to me, Gina, what are you running from? And it clicked something in my mind. And I said, wow, what am I running from? Because even if I left Ohio and moved, everything that I was feeling, everything that was going on emotionally that I was attached to would have followed me. So even if I would have been okay there temporarily, I would have been a wreck months probably down the road, because it all lives in your nervous system. And so I remember just praying to God. And in 2021, I found a trauma recovery program. Let me back up a minute before I get into that. Hold on a minute. Let me back up. Boop. Yep, because this is the turning point when I went into trauma recovery. I was actually seeing a psychologist, and I had hit a brick wall with her, and I just thought, I'm not getting anywhere. I feel like I'm still the same. And she said, Gina, you need to read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. He's one of the leading psychologists out of Massachusetts. He's an amazing, amazing doctor. I read the book. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. I read the book, and within the first chapter, I started bawling my eyes out. It took me probably about 4 years later to understand exactly what that book meant, when I finally went into my trauma recovery program. Trauma is stored in the body. Hence, the body keeps the score. When I read that book, what it was telling me is everything I was feeling, it validated everything, from the shame, from the guilt, from the intrusive thoughts, from the cognitive distortions, the mood swings, the negative stance, the negativity that I had. I was like a Debbie Downer. I would yell, I would scream, and just triggered, because my emotions and my nervous system were dysregulated. I had no idea that's what it was. And so when I read that book, I finally realized, holy cow, this has nothing to do with me. I mean, it does, but this is what trauma does to you. And it was from there, I said, oh my word, God, I want to be able to help other people. So in 2021, I got into a trauma recovery program, so I could actually start working with females that have gone through similar circumstances that I have gone through. And it's heartbreaking, but it's been so rewarding. And so from there, I was able to understand, okay, what is triggering me? Why am I having these mood swings? Why is my emotions all over the place? Why is my nervous system so out of whack? And it was during that, those 6 months. And so I got my feet wet and I was like, oh yeah, this is interesting. So then I went on to learn more and more and more about trauma.
Okay. I love that. And we got to, first and foremost, I want to say shout out to my friend and my friend Tina Fox. She has an amazing podcast. She's on TikTok. She does lives out there. She's out there doing some amazing things in the world as well. And she has some events coming up. Thank you, Tina, for tuning in, and for everyone else who have been tuning in as well. So now I got a question, because, as you were speaking about that, I started thinking about my own journey and, the things I've had to recognize, right? Things that I was doing. And one of the things, one of my biggest survival mechanisms is that I would detach from people and try to stay as far away from people as I possibly can. Now I do that in two ways. One is not a detachment. One is so I can recharge. But if things become a little bit too real for me and people try to get too close to me, there's something that triggers inside of me that I'm working on. And it goes, what's your intention? Are you going to try to hurt me? Mm-hmm. Right? Are you, what are you setting me up for? And the reason being, because my whole entire life, no one's ever given me a reason to trust. Now, I'm not going to say that now. I'm not going to say that now, because I have some amazing people in my circle, people that I'm so happy to have around. But I still, once in a while, when new people are introduced and they try to get close to me, I go, I can't do this, right? And so it takes me a while. It takes me a while to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and that's my way of saying, can I trust this person? And the way that I do it, and this is going to sound messed up, I will push a person out of my life just to see if they will come back, right? And I will keep doing that just to be sure if this person is genuine about being in my life. And once that part is done, it's like, okay, now that I know, now we can work on me trusting myself to trust you, right? And once that happens, I'm usually pretty good, but it takes me a long time to get through that, right? And again, it goes back to what I just said. People have never given me a reason to trust them, right? I've been a casualty of other people's choices.
Yes.
What I'm saying? I've had people just try to do really bad things to me throughout my life. And that's what made me just want to just stay in the shadows and kind of maneuver, what I'm saying? And I got really good at being alone. I got really good. There's a saying. I got really good at being a Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is that him? Is that really a Tony? Right? And then next thing you know, I'm gone. Right? I was out, and that's been my whole entire life. It took me a long time to say, I don't want this anymore. But I have to figure out what's going on. And as you mentioned before, and I'm glad that you said this, the nervous system and the body keeps score.
Yes.
Right? And I didn't know anything about that until I got into this field. I didn't know that the body was keeping score. I didn't know that I had been in survival mode so long that that's all I really understood.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to navigate that was its own challenge in itself. And I know, most people go, well, surround yourself with people. I functioned a lot better on my own, because I didn't want the outside influence to come in, but it also gave me a reason to be able to slow myself down and begin to ask the questions. I began to talk to God a little bit more. Then I decided, you know what? I want to be your friend. My goal is to be God's friend, right? So because I need someone to come back and tell me, be honest with me when I'm not doing okay. If I'm out there messing up, right? And sometimes you have people that would do that for you, and sometimes you got to go inside and maybe outside of your own consciousness to seek that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So what comes up for me when you're talking is anxious attachment. Um, it sounds to me like you've had maybe, I go into the coaching role, which I don't like to, but just going on what I know and listening to you, it sounds like there was maybe some abandonment issues that some people have let you down in life. And so your nervous system remembers that. And so the anxious attachment means that you become anxious when you try to attach, which means when you try to form friendships, when you try to get around people, your body knows. You should be able to discern. Um, if you get like those butterflies in your stomach, then wait a minute, stay away from them. And things like that too. But where you're pushing them and pushing them and pushing them away to see if they're going to come back, that brings me to the anxious. I believe it's the anxious attachment style, and part of the abandonment, because what you're doing is you're pushing them away so they don't leave you. You want to hurt them first so you don't get hurt because you've been hurt so much.
That's a harsh truth right there.
Yep,
Yeah,
yes.
that's a harsh truth because that's pretty much dead on. Because I've always been that way, right?
Yes.
I've always been the type of person that's like, before you hurt me, I would rather leave you, right? And I would justify it by saying, no one's going to get hurt, right? Like if I do this, no one's going to get hurt. If I can become the villain in your story, it's going to justify your healing, right? And I don't mind you talking bad about it. Go ahead. I can take that because by the time the stories get running to me, I'm going to be gone anyway.
Right.
That's the way I've always looked at it. But now it leads me to an interesting question. How many other people do this?
A lot. You would be amazed. I'm not really familiar, to be honest with you. I'm not really familiar with the other attachment styles because the only one that I have really kind of not really dug deep in, but know is the anxious, because that's what I am. I do the same thing as you. I have abandonment issues. And so there's so many people that do this. They continue to push people away, push them away because they're afraid of getting hurt. They're afraid of feeling what they felt in the past. So they don't want anybody to get close to them and then leave, because what ends up happening is usually our caregivers, like our parents, our grandparents, people that cared for us, that were supposed to love and nurturing us, let us down. They failed us. And so in a sense, they abandoned us. They didn't give us the love and nurturing that we needed. And so they hurt us. So our nervous system knew that from a very young age. So when you welcome new people into your life, you wonder what is it they want? What is it they want? And so what we end up doing is we push them away because we don't know if they're out to get us, out to hurt us, or if they're really genuine. And so we start pushing them away and figure if we push them away and we're harsh to them, if they come back, then their intentions are real. They really do want to be our friend. But if you push them away and they stay away, chances are then we're thinking, oh, all they did was they were going to do something vicious to us. When in fact, maybe that's not the case, but that's what our nervous system is doing. It's a protection. That's what it's there for. It's protecting us. And so when you're in survival mode, those types of after effects intensify is exactly what happens. Yep.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, which leads me to my next question. What was some of the steps that you took? I know you said you went to therapy and things like that. But for those who don't have the ability to go to therapy and they come to you, I know you said you get down to the root cause. Once you figure out the root cause, what are some of the steps that you take and walk them through to help them begin to learn to articulate what's going on with them, but also find the different avenues to develop those tools to be able to deal with those things and start the healing process? Because the healing process is hard, right? It's hard, and it's more hurtful than sometimes the grief or the trauma that we experience. Oh. And the reason being, and again, this is just hypothetically speaking, in my own thoughts, is that it reveals a lot of things about who you were. It's designed, the healing is designed to get you down to the bare minimum so you can begin to develop the tools to live a happy, healthier life.
Yes.
Right? So I want to, that's my first question. My second question is that something that I've experienced recently with the anniversary of my son. Before the anniversary even came up, I've been keeping myself so busy that I began to feel it. Like I began to become a lot more anxious.
Mm-hmm.
I began to I began to find myself lost in my head a lot of times,
Yes.
to where I knew I had to sit down and and kind of separate myself from people. So my next question, the second part of that question would be, how do you get people out of their head?
Okay. Yep. All right. So the first one about the root cause. So once we identify what the root cause is, what I do is one of the first things that I do with all of my clients is teach them their triggers. There's always triggering that happens when people have after effects. So let me just give you an idea. Somebody that has, again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm just going to say anxiety because I think a lot of people have anxiety. When it comes to anxiety, there's a root cause. A lot of them only look for the signs and symptoms. So we look for the root cause of anxiety. And so anxiety, you usually have, it usually comes with nervousness, intrusive thinking, cognitive distortions, your heart rate, you start sweating. All of those are actually signs and symptoms of anxiety. What happens is when we look at the root cause, we have to look at what's going on in the body, the physiological, not just the psychological. So I say to them, when you're triggered, what ends up happening? So let's bring up anger. When somebody's triggered, the first thing that not the first thing, but most of the time, the first thing that happens is mood swings. Mood swings represent other mental health challenges. And so they have their highs and lows. They become angry. They'll start screaming and hollering. Some of them will have kind of like a blacking out, but they're still spewing at the mouth, those types of things. And so the first thing that I teach my clients is triggering, mindfulness. What is going on in your body? What are you watching 5 minutes before, or what are you listening to 5 minutes before you had this episode? It's building the mindfulness. It's building that awareness to let them know, okay, this is what's going on, but now we have to get you to understand why it's happening. There's times it still happens to me, and I've been doing this for 4 years. There's times it still happens. I'm watching a movie, and all of a sudden my nervous system will get amped up, and I'm like, what on earth is going on? Well, then I'm like, oh, I have to sit with this and figure it out. And then I figure out what's going on. But unfortunately, so many people, it takes a little bit of time because we work on the physiological first, the body first, because sometimes it's the body that starts with the intrusive thinking and the cognitive distortion. So we can't just work on the mind. We have to work on the body because the trauma stays trapped in the cellular level. So once we start introducing triggering and I start getting them to be more aware and more mindful, some of the things that I get them to do, and I'll share here because they're easy. If you are right-handed, you do everything with your right hand. You usually open your car door with your right hand. Obviously, you start your car with your right hand. If you're pushing the button, we brush our teeth, we wash our dishes. You usually wash your body with your right hand. Okay, so your brain is accustomed to all that. Same thing when you go to the store. When you go to the store, chances are you take the same way. Your brain is accustomed to you going that same way, or to work. Your brain is accustomed. Okay, go a different way to work. Brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Try stirring a pot of macaroni if you're cooking it on the stove with your non-dominant hand. I guarantee you can't look at your phone and stir it with your left hand if that's your non-dominant hand, because chances are you're going to be like, oh my goodness, I'm going to burn myself, because your brain is not accustomed to that yet. So basically what we're doing is we're trying to develop those awareness skills and those mindfulness skills to help you identify what's happening with the body. Once we can get you to identify, we can start working on nervous system dysregulation to get that regulated and get your emotions regulated. The first step is definitely triggering. To answer your second question, with everything that you have going on, what ends up happening is that your body remembers. So your body remembers everything. And when we try to ignore that, it intensifies all of those feelings. So grief, there's grief, and people don't understand, but there's grief and trauma. There's grief of let me just say this, there's grief and wishing, wishing that we had had parents, how do you want to say that? wishing we had the parents that we wanted. So we have to grieve that loss and take our parents at who they are. So there's a lot of grieving in trauma as well. So what ends up happening is people don't like to sit with all of those emotions, all of those feelings, all of that dysregulation. So we are more apt as humans to get up and move around and ignore that. Well, it intensifies it because your nervous system is there to protect you. It's trying to tell you something. And so if we're not sitting with it, trying to understand what's happening, it's just going to intensify and you're going to stay in that survival mode and your nervous system is never going to be regulated. So with what you were talking about with your son, there's a lot of grief that's coming up. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of feelings. And what you're doing is running. You're running away from it because you don't want to feel it, which is normal. How many of us really want to feel that? Because it sends us back to probably it sends us back to the day that maybe those feelings came up. And so we don't want to sit with it because it's very, very uncomfortable. And so sitting in the moment, I tell my clients, if you sit in it for 30 seconds, for 1 minute, that's a start. I don't expect you to sit with it for 5 minutes, but sit in it for 30 seconds or 1 minute and see what it's telling you. Grieving, when we grieve things, there's no time limit. You can be happy 1 minute, as you know, that's exactly what you do. You can be happy 1 minute and you can be crying the next. Yeah. But our nervous system always has a story to tell. And just being able to sit with it for just a minute and just see what that story is trying to tell you. And one thing I do want to say, because, when I do my podcast, I all my audience is all men. And, and men's mental health. But what I do want to say is this: it's okay to cry. For anybody, it's okay to cry. Crying does not show weakness. Crying shows that you are releasing. You're releasing that hurt and that pain. Or it could be that you're excited, you're happy. But I just want people to know that it's okay to cry. It's okay to release whatever's going on.
I like that. And the fact that you brought up men's mental health, it's a huge thing because men, it's really hard to get men to talk. And I've been working with men now for 6 years, right? And I have over 32,000 men that I work with across the world. So I've been pretty blessed and fortunate to even have those numbers. And I'm always looking to do more, right? But I'm also looking to educate people on how men deal with these things, right? And you had said something, and I want to touch on that a little bit. The sitting with your trauma, sitting with your grief. Part of that is, and I could be wrong on this, is becoming submissive to the process of the healing that comes along with that. Yes. Most people, if you've been a fighter your whole entire life, it's really hard to become obedient to it. It's really hard to become submissive to it, because most of us, it's a sense of vulnerability that comes along with it. Mm-hmm. It says, I'm not going to do this because it leaves me open for others to come in and ridicule me. Now, the other part of this is, when we think about when your traumas, your trauma triggers show up or your grief triggers show up, it's understanding that it's a selfish thing. Like, these things are selfish. And what I mean by that is that when it shows up, it doesn't care who you're with, it doesn't care what you're doing, it doesn't care your age, it doesn't care your gender. It's like it comes up and says, hey, you're going to pay attention to me today, right? And if you don't, it will continually nag at you. And what I found was, throughout my own journey, is that if I ignored it, it's a slow, constant buildup of things. Yes. Right? It's like, oh, you don't want to deal with this? Well, let's add this on top of it. Let's add this until I really learn to sit with it. And you're absolutely right. 30 seconds, 30 seconds is totally fine. If you only got 5 seconds to sit with it, that's totally fine. As long as you make the intention of sitting with it and not missing the opportunity to learn from it. Yes. I'm going to put this up here because this is a great one. Secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Yes. And so what do you think about that? Thank you, Tina. What do you think about that statement?
So with men's mental health, and then with, yeah, I kind of got lost. Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
That's the trauma brain. And that's why you know what? That's why I like doing these lives, because I'm sitting here listening, and then all of a sudden you put that up there, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I know. That's why I know. That's why I love doing these, though, because it shows you that despite everything that I've gone through, like my trauma brain still kicks in. Like, wait a minute, what did he just say? I'm like, oh, God. And I do get embarrassed, but then I'm like, no, I like doing these because it's authentic. And then it lets people welcome into my world. So sorry. Can you repeat what you just said? Like, just what were you asking me? I'm sorry.
Well, I was saying, I was mentioning how trauma triggers and grief triggers require you to be obedient to it, because it's a selfish thing, right? When it shows up, it's like, hey, I need you to pay attention to me. So if people ever wondering what that clingy spouse is, this is it doesn't get any more clingier than this, right? Because it's like, you're going to pay attention to me. If not, I'm going to nag you and nag you and nag you, and it begins to compile all of these different things. And then Tina put up here, Tina put on secure, anxious, avoided, and disorganized, right? I'm just like, right, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I was like, wait a minute. My brain just went whoop for a second. I was like, oh yeah. I looked down, and then I was like, oh goodness, yes. I was getting ready to answer it, and I was like, oh goodness gracious. So yes, I'm so sorry. But thank you, Tony, for reiterating that. Absolutely. So now that I just showed you like how my trauma brain goes, oh, wait a minute, what happened? Yes. So what ends up happening is when you ignore what's going on, it amplifies. And so let me just tell you a little bit of story about me when I went through my cognitive distortion. So cognitive distortions are the worst thoughts anybody can have. And so because of the journey of everything that I went through in my life, as I started going through my healing journey, my thoughts coming from a negative environment, my thoughts amplified. They turned to cognitive distortions. And so the cognitive distortion that I dealt with was catastrophizing. So everything amplified for me, everything. And so I didn't see thoughts, or, mine weren't thoughts, they were images. So my mind would play movies. It was like I could literally see things. And I was like, oh, this is pretty scary. Like, oh my goodness, mine's not a thought. It's literally a movie. And so what I had to do like mine was a lot. I had to sit with everything, and it was very uncomfortable at first. I thought, I'm not giving up control. I don't want to do this. I don't like this feeling. And then on top of that, we have what's called the inner critic. And the inner critic, if you're Christian, the inner critic, they say, is Satan and God. If you're not, that's okay. But the inner critic is just part of who you are. And the inner critic. So my inner critic was a green guy. I don't know where it came from, but he was a green guy named Fred. And Fred would always be sitting on my shoulder telling me all this stuff. And I was like, Fred, if I could just flick you away, I would. The more I tried to ignore Fred, the more Fred was showing up in everything that I was doing. And I thought, this is nuts. Every time I tried to ignore the cognitive distortions, they would come full fold. It didn't matter what I was doing. If I was listening to music, if I was just jamming out, whatever I was doing, they would creep in. And it got to the point that it was kind of disabling me. It got to the point that it was controlling me, because we get so anxious because we don't sit with it. We get so anxious when we get a thought, it controls us. And so for probably a year and a half, I let all of those control me. And when you can learn to control them, that's when the healing takes place. I had to sit with the feeling and say, you know what? My brain's telling me today that if I do this, this, and this, that this is going to happen. And I'd say, oh no, today I'm in control. I'm in control. This is not happening today. I'm not going to stay in because you're telling me if I walk, I might fall. No, if I fall, well, somebody will be there to pick me up. And that's just a part of the anxiety and stuff that I have. Or, I still have some of it, but sitting with it, what happens is you start to develop a sense of who you are. You start developing a sense of you are in control. You're still in control of what's happening. You've never given up control. You're just learning to take over now. Your body's not in control anymore. You are. And once you can start understanding that, you can really start developing a lot more. Now, if you're sitting and you don't like those feelings, start journaling what's coming up. Don't just sit with it, journal. Because when you start journaling, you're actually taking what's in the body and the mind and on paper, and you can look at that later on and go, oh, this is what was coming up for me, and look at it and say, okay, this is coming up for me now. What's coming up for me later? And kind of dissect what is going on when you look at all of that. And so those are things, again, that when I work with my clients as well, it's sitting with it. And then they come back and say, okay, Gina, this is what was coming up for me. And we can look at that further. And so it's getting in the uncomfortableness. It's getting in and allowing it to kind of sitting with it and knowing that you have control. Because I will tell you, as somebody, I didn't know this before, but somebody that, like me, I have anxiety. Anxiety happens when your thoughts, when you don't control your thoughts. That's usually the first thing that arises your anxiety to start taking flight. It's the fight or flight process, or a fight or flight that happens in the amygdala. And so which is part of the brain. So what ends up happening is that your thoughts, you have a thought, and then all of a sudden you get anxious. Well, you get anxious, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, usually anxiety is a part of fear. Well, something's going to happen. And then you sit with either an anxiety attack or a panic attack, when in fact, when that thought first happened, if you said, I'm okay, this is not real, and whatever else, something positive to divert your attention to something else. It's not saying you're ignoring it, but when you take control of it and say, this is not controlling me today, that's when you start healing as well.
I love the fact that you brought that up, because I think, and I could be wrong with this, a lot of people don't know that they can control those things, right? Because it's such an emotional thing that it will take you every which way but loose. So especially if you have a hard time regulating your emotions, if you're not emotionally aware of what's going on, then the control goes in so many different ways. Your thoughts, the way that you react, and things like that. Like your responsiveness goes out the window, and it's more emotional. It's more reactional, things like that. And we already know once we allow those reactions to begin to pick away at us, we can find ourselves in some really, really tough situations. Now, I want to talk about the nervous system for a little bit, right? Because a lot of people don't understand that there's a saying when I first got into grief. We grieve in the top half of our body, from the neck up, right? And the nervous system, tries to regulate, but there's no signals going through to say, hey, do this and do that, and do this and do that, right? So those were types of attachment disorders. Very, very true. So, but a lot of times we don't know how to get the synapses to start firing on all cylinders, connecting the brain to the body to be able to trust our gut of what it's telling us, right? Stay there?
I'm still here. Yep.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on getting the nervous system to reconnect to itself, to begin to calm it down? Because I know there's other techniques out there that some that I've developed, and a lot more that you've developed on your own end. So how do we get people out of their own head to get to more of a responsive to get to responding better to what's going on, to what our body is.
Okay. Yep. So let me. Yep. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of technical stuff in the brain first before I actually go on to talking about maybe one of the things that I actually do that helps reprogram the subconscious. So as trauma survivors, well, let me back up because this happens to everybody. Your prefrontal cortex does not develop until you're about 25 or 26. It just depends. That's the age, 25 or 26. So your prefrontal cortex is what is needed for executive functioning, anything to do with like logical thinking, things like that. So that is really what you need for your day-to-day functions. That's exactly what you need your prefrontal cortex to work, because you just need it to work. That's the part of the brain that again tells you what you're doing, your logical thinking, executive functioning, just all things. So it does that. So it's connected to the amygdala. And so the amygdala, what's a portion of that, and the hippocampus. So they're all like connected here. So the hippocampus is where all your memories are stored. Your prefrontal cortex, again, is for all of your, your logical thinking and all of that stuff. Your amygdala is where your fight, flight, fawn, and freezing comes in, primarily your fight or flight. Trauma survivors, what ends up happening is their prefrontal cortex is not working. It doesn't work properly. It's not engaged where it should be. So my husband and I, we had a disagreement about this. And he said, when you're triggered, you can help it. And I said, no, I can't. Like, it's kind of like you black out, but you're still kind of spewing at the mouth. You have no idea. Well, when I started digging into my complex trauma certification, what I found out is that when your prefrontal cortex is not fully engaged, you have all of these outbursts. You have all of these things that happen to you. Your nervous system can't communicate with your brain correctly because you're dysregulated all the time. So then when that happens, what ends up happening is then your amygdala, because it's getting memories from the hippocampus. So you're triggered. So your hippocampus is getting a memory, shifting it over to the amygdala and saying, uh-oh, wait a minute, threat or danger. So now you automatically stay in fight or flight. You're in survival mode. So you're in this constant fight or flight. I was that way for quite some time because the connection between my mind and my body was not there. And I was like, oh, I'm perfectly fine. I'm doing all this awareness stuff and I'm doing all of this. Absolutely it is. Until I became a NeuroSomatic Art practitioner, and I started diving deep into art, working with reprogramming the subconscious through repairing, rewiring, and reconnecting the neurons. Then I started realizing, oh my goodness, I am not connected whatsoever. I can do a drawing and not feel any sensations in my body. And I was like, oh, or no emotions. And I thought, oh yeah, if I'm this way, can you imagine how many others are feeling this way? And so there are other things that you can do to get your brain connected to your body. So if your prefrontal cortex, if you're worried about that, there's a thing called trauma-informed movements. And what that does is when you start doing them daily, it goes back to the awareness piece about using your non-dominant hand. But what this does is that you're using your whole entire body along with breath. And as you're doing it, it's just like a light exercise. And what it's doing is you are repairing your prefrontal cortex as well. That works as well. But what happens when all of that trauma, we have all the limiting beliefs, and then we have all the trauma that's stuck in the subconscious area, just sitting there. We have no idea all the things that we have gone through, but guess what? The body does. So that's why it's important. There's a lot of things out there with art. It's really, really important to work with a practitioner on doing these types of things, because a lot of things may come up. And so what we do, or what I do, is the art portion of it actually reprograms the subconscious. So it starts connecting. It works with your emotions, works with regulating the nervous system, the vagus nerve. It works with using both the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So it works with every portion of your body. And that's what people need in order to start healing on a deeper level. And so what they are saying now is that you need either neurosomatic art, breath work, or NLP. There's a couple of other ones that you could do. You need to do them in conjunction with either coaching or alone, or with coaching, because you need to start being able to eliminate the trapped trauma that's actually in the body. And you will not be able to eliminate that until you start focusing on the subconscious, because it's the subconscious that's driving a lot of the cells. A lot of the trapped trauma in the cells is emotions. So they go hand in hand working together.
That makes a lot of sense. Um, and just in your own opinion, what sort of time frame should a person have, or is it just like grief? There's no time frame on this. You just take it day by day. You develop the tools, and and you begin to implement those tools when necessary, right? Because we like one thing that I've learned is that I can give people all the tools, but they may not be necessary at the time when they're
Mm-hmm.
going through something, right? But
Yes.
as long as they have the tools, they can pick and choose which ones is going to be beneficial in the moment that they're in, right?
Yes.
Whether it be breath work, whether it be tapping, whether it be, journaling, whether it be just sitting down, being quiet and listening to music, things like that. So what was I going with that? Oh, so when we think about those things, right? What are your thoughts on that? As far as it being linear, or what I'm saying, is there a way that we can put a time limit on?
No. Really, there's no timeline.
No.
Um, healing is not linear. So it's not. So
Yeah.
you can't say, oh well, I'm working on this and this and this, because what ends up happening is like with any journey, when you start healing one aspect of your life and you start building safety, other things are going to start coming up. And so that's why when we teach you the coping skills, we teach you adaptive. Adaptive is positive. We teach you adaptive coping skills that you can use every step of the way. And so it's being consistent. And when you start feeling safe, more things are going to come up. And so you'll have the coping skills to identify what to, like when something comes up, to identify what's coming up and what coping skill to use. And things like that. That's why I actually love the art. If I can just talk just for a second, why I love the art is this. So many people come in to my practice and they don't like to talk, especially teens. They don't like talking at all. Some adults, they'll come to me and say, I have this indescribable feeling, Gina, and I just can't understand what it is. Well, I understand that feeling because it's a feeling that you can't describe what's going on, because it's so deep and so hurtful and so painful that bringing it up and reliving those circumstances are just going to set you back. And so what I love about the art is it tells their story. I guide them through and it literally tells their story. And so I have had clients, not saying that, 6 months, but I've had clients in 6 months go, oh my goodness, or even working with them for a month or two, say, I've never felt this good in all the years of doing other things. So it's releasing, but it's knowing that you have to use those coping skills and know that that when you have, I don't really want to say healed, because are we ever really healed? Are we ever fully healed? No. And so it's healing that one portion, but now you've brought up now safety has stepped in. Now your body feels safe, and now it's going to bring up more things for you. And so in the long run, it's a forever journey. You are constantly on this healing journey. You will have aspects that are healing and maybe are healed, but you're always going to be on this journey of healing, because it's going to bring up more and more for you. So there's no timeline.
I love that. I love that. And you talk about, and I want to just touch on this a little bit, because when we talk about this, when you were speaking about this, I was thinking about the addictive mindset that goes along with that, right? And it's some things that working with a lot of men, I do realize that our coping mechanism, aside from anger or disassociation or isolation, things like that, our go-tos, a part of that is the addictive mind saying, I just need a break from this, right? And so we would do things like, my thing, just like most people, was alcohol. It
Yes.
helped me numb the pains. It kept me from
Mm.
feeling what I needed to feel, and it gave me an excuse whenever those feelings came back up to drink more, right? And I was really bad. I used to drink. Oh my God, the amount of stuff that I used to drink. I realized I used to tell people, don't get me started, because I don't have an off button.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized that it was doing is that it was coming out in different ways, right? It's definitely coming out in different ways. It was coming out in ways of anger, being very violent, um, being very cold towards people. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just did not care. Like if he was going, I did not care. Right? Don't tell me your problems. I got enough problems of my own. Right?
Right.
But of course, now I sit around and I go, yeah, bring me your problems. Let's sit with them for a minute. Let's talk about them. And, making the conversation about them and not about the journey that I've been on, but utilizing those experiences to be able to benefit other people. So yeah, when it comes down to the addictive mind, how much of a role does it play when coping with the trauma that you've dealt with?
Oh, the mind plays a significant role in with trauma, because we're always, going back to what you just talked about, alcohol and drugs. We would do anything to mask the pain. We Nobody wants to feel this pain. Nobody does. But what ends up happening is the mind plays a huge role in that. And so if your mind is not healthy, obviously your body's not going to be healthy. And so nutrition plays a huge factor in that too. That's a whole nother thing. But nutrition plays a huge factor in it. But a lot of us
Yeah.
aren't taught those positive coping skills. And so what we do is we say, man, all I want to do is not feel this hurt and pain. And so we revert to maladaptive coping skills, which are a negative coping skills, which again, it's not, a lot of people think of drugs and alcohol because that's what we always see. But what about this? What about the people that are addicted to pornography? What about gambling? Those are all a part of um, the mind. So what happens is when you drink, when you do drugs, whether you're addicted to pornography, whether you're addicted to gambling, and things like that, any addiction. I was addicted to jewelry. I'll tell you about, hopefully I remember, but I'll tell you about that in a second. But what happens is when you're doing those things, you get this euphoric feeling, your dopamine rises and you feel good. Although when you drink, you may have turned into a different person, but what ends up happening is it take, like when you're drinking and you're doing drinking and drugs, that's a different feeling. But when you're doing a lot of the other things, it brings you this feeling of accomplishment, of, oh my goodness, like this makes me feel good. And that is a different way of taking away the pain. The drugs and alcohol, they're downers, and so they take the pain away in a different way. So you become more of a down. It's more of a downer than it is an upper. The other ones are more of an upper. Um, and so for me, I didn't realize when I started drinking in my teens why I was drinking. I would just start drinking. I thought, well, okay, I'm going to start drinking. Well, then I realized, okay, I was probably drinking because of my pain, and all of that. But both of my parents were alcoholics. Then, so it ran in my family. But I'm a cycle breaker now. I don't drink. Like I've not drank. I drank for that span, which I'm proud of myself. Um, but when it came to jewelry, there everybody looks at just drugs and alcohol, but let's look at the other addictions as well, really quick, because it is the mind, it's the dopamine, it's the neurotransmitters. That's the serotonin. Those are all the feel good. I want to say drugs, but I know that's not the right thing. Chemicals. I'm just going to say chemicals because that's what the body needs.
Yeah.
So for me,
Yeah.
what would happen is I had a negative attachment to jewelry. And so I was addicted to jewelry. I was addicted because when my abuser would abuse me, and if, to apologize, my abuser would buy me jewelry. And so I started, and then I would feel good. Oh my goodness, they bought me jewelry. I feel good now. So, when I married my husband now, I can't tell you the last time that our jewelry card was not maxed out, because I would say, I'm going to the store. And then I would feel down, and that would be what I wanted. I would look through pages of jewelry and say, oh, I want that. And I was just like, oh. So one day sitting in my office, we were talking about addictions of some sort, and it just clicked. Oh my goodness, I have a jewelry addiction. But because I had the attachment that if somebody did something bad to me, they would give me jewelry and it would make me feel good. So to me, jewelry made me feel good, when in fact it really wasn't the jewelry making me feel good. It was just that euphoric feeling, but the jewelry, buying it, made me feel good. It's kind of like shopper's guilt. When you go out and buy something and then you have shopper's guilt, then you're like, oh, I just bought that and spent $500. I need to return it. Chances are you don't return it. And so there was times I did have that, but in that moment I felt good. But I don't have that anymore. I worked through it and realized it was a negative attachment for me. And so the mind plays a lot in what we're doing, but you have to make sure that nutrition is key, because it's the carbohydrates. I will say this, it's the good carbs, not saying eat bad carbs, but it's the good carbohydrates as the neurotransmitters that actually, they help those chemicals, the dopamine and the serotonin, go up into the brain. And so when you do that, you end up having a healthy brain and a healthy body. And that plays a huge factor in everything that we do, everything that we do. The brain is, I tell people, the mind is very deceiving. But all we want to do is release that pain. And so we look for other avenues to release it.
Yeah. But man, there's a lot to unpack there. There's so much to unpack there.
It's one of those
but
things.
I want people to reach out to. Yeah, most definitely. So I only have a couple more questions left for you, Gina.
Sure.
You know, because I want people to be able to reach out to you and things like that from somebody who knows what they're talking about, right? That walk. So my next question would be, Gina, how can people find you?
Sure. So I have a website, and my website is artoftransformation.life. You can reach me there. I am on TikTok. It's the neuroplasticityguru. I do YouTubes. So on Monday night at 7:30, I do a live podcast. It's raw, it's real. I do the unknown truths of trauma. And my podcast is actually called Healed-ish. And so I am on YouTube as well. And I would love if you have any questions. I'm an open book. I'm very transparent. And if anybody has any questions, if you have anything that you'd like to discuss, or if you just want to know about the art that I do, my website is filled with all kinds of detail as far as what the art does, who it's for. And it's not just about trauma. We can do it for anything. The art is actually for anything, but it's just, obviously trauma is where I'm specialized in as well, and things like that. But if anybody has any questions or anything like that, I would welcome you to reach out to me. I would love to connect and answer anything, answer any questions or anything that you have.
Love that. I love that. Now, a second question would be, if Gina had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, if I had a superpower, oh boy. Wow, I've never been asked that before. Wow. I'm going to say my superpower. Oh, brother, that's a good one. Oh my goodness. My superpower would probably be strength. You never realize how strong you are. Not that I'm strong from my trauma, because trauma doesn't make you strong. But I'm going to have to say strength, because it took a lot of strength to get to where I am today. And obviously it wasn't through, just me. God helped me too, but it was strength, because there was a lot of hurdles, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. And if you don't have strength, I'm not going to say you're going to fail, because I would never say that to anybody, but you need strength. You need to be able to say, wow, look at where I was and look where I am today. You're never going to be the same person you were. So I'd say my superpower is definitely is strength. That is my superpower. I have a lot of strength.
I love that. And it shows. It definitely shows. Now,
Thank you.
My next thing would be, if you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
So one thing I do want to tell all of you is one of the things I like to tell everybody this is, you are not broken. That is one thing that I want to tell you. You are not broken. My story, I gave you a portion of my testimony, of my story. That's just a portion of it. but there is hope. There's people like me out there to help you. There's people out like Tony out there to help you. And you're not broken. You're just going through some things right now. And you just have to find your way, whether it's finding your way by yourself or connecting with somebody else. There's a community out there that would love to support you in any way that you need to. We are the ones that are bringing hope. We're the ones bringing the inspiration, the empowerment. And I want you to know that the fight that you're fighting, you're never alone. We're only a step away, a call away, an email away. So always realize that you're not alone, and you're not broken. That I think if somebody would have said that to me, probably would have helped, because as trauma survivors, we always think that we're broken, and we're really not. Just the things that we've gone through in life.
I understand that. Definitely understand that. And for everyone who have been tuning in, Gina's information is in the YouTube description. Go over there, check her out. Check out her YouTube channel. Tune in to her. She's out there doing some amazing things. And for everyone else who have been tuning in, if you have not already, do me a favor, head on over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And most importantly, maybe these conversations aren't for you just yet, but maybe you know somebody who can benefit from the conversations that we have. Do me a favor, share this along with them. And again, go back through, find some things in there. There's some amazing people in there. Reach out to them. Get the help and support that you need and deserve from some amazing people that are out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. With that being said, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys already know what it is. We do one every day. So you guys be able to tune in tomorrow for another episode. And with that being said, guys, thank you for your support. And if you're not, be out there making memories with the people that you love, because tomorrow's not promised, right? And guys, have an amazing day. This is Tony. We're signing out. 11.